Hi guys, a massive welcome back to my channel, and a bit of acrylic just flew onto there. The item that I reviewed was WHsmiths PVA Glue. This is going to be much more based towards the kind of pouring medium, as in that you use within acrylic pouring. So first off, I want to start off with is, if you're new to acrylic pouring, there are plenty of videos on YouTube to take a look at. The pouring medium that I use, which is WHsmiths Pva Glue, that I use instead of, let's say, one of the more famous pouring mediums, which is Floetrol. There's also Deco Arts pouring medium, there's Liquitex, there's etc, etc. But I decided to replace it with this PVA glue because I was trying to find a way around reducing the cost of pouring medium, trying to get the same effect. Because at the start, you aren't going to be wanting to spend a lot of money on materials that you don't necessarily want to use, so maybe you want to practice on cheaper materials that have the same sort of outcome or have a very similar characteristic of usual painting mediums. With that said, I'm going to talk to you through all of the little pours that I had done with this WHsmiths PVA glue. So I'm going to start off with these three. These are all 8x8. They are all very cool in terms of composition, colour, pigmentation. Already you can see that obviously composition is down to what I am doing. The colour pigment though is down to the Crawford Black's acrylic paints. Obviously I know they're a good brand, I've used them quite a few times over the past few months, and I decided they're actually a lot better and a lot less expensive compared to, let's say, Deco Arts Americana paints. Does not mean they're better, I just think they're, for use of primary colours, are so inexpensive. The first one I did was actually the kind of first impressions one. This is how it turned out. Obviously when you do acrylic pouring, they are always going to dry matte. From the first to the very last, I definitely learnt quite a lot in terms of making the mixture right. I think I started on about 60% of acrylic paint, 40% PVA glue. With water to consistency, I quickly found out that you needed to add quite a lot of water, obviously a little bit at a time when you're mixing up the painting mediums, but obviously it's different for every single different paint, acrylic paint that you're using. The first one came out very well. There's a lot of pigment here. We got some few cells, which is really nice. Definitely a good start. I really like this one. I will definitely keep this one. So this canvas is going to be saved. The next one I did, I believe, was this much larger one. This is I think it's 12 by 15 canvas. In terms of going from an 8x8 to a much bigger canvas, this is definitely a bit more of a challenge because obviously I did have to put a lot more paint on, but I soon realised that actually the paints can muddy up quite a lot more easier. Obviously it's going to happen when you use a material such as the PVA glue that isn't going to hold like the colours as much as Floetrol is, because it's designed to hold the pigment a lot more. So with that in mind, I do think it still was quite successful. I definitely got some of the nice pigments in here. Cells were created with my silicone. Feels quite light. This again is a canvas that I've used many times to try and get a good acrylic pour out of. I feel like I want to cover this one up again, just because I feel like I know a lot more about the PVA glue and how to actually mix it a lot more this time around. But in terms of like texture and that, and actually the ratio, it started to get a bit more towards 50%, 30% and 20%. 50% meaning the acrylic paint, 30% meaning the PVA glue, and then 20% around the water ratio. So yeah, very happy. The colour pigmentation obviously is going to matte down like I said before. So yeah, very happy how this one turned out, but obviously I want to try and develop more of a better composition. So moving on to the next two 8x8s, this is a tree ring pour. I do have to put this down to human error because when I finished recording this one, I did not remove it from my carpet, which actually was a bit off level, so I think it went obviously that way and a lot of the paint came off. That's why there are some gaps around the side. It still works in the terms of composition, bear that in mind. In terms of the rings, They are not perfect, but they are, well, good enough to do a tree ring pour. And obviously again the pigment is held quite well within this, and it can be improved with the clear lacquer that I usually use. So funnily enough, the next two that I'm going to talk to you about, well, three should I say, are going to be all dirty pours. So these three are actually the 3 dirty pours I created from the leftover paints from doing, I think it's 3 other acrylic pours. Obviously one was a lot larger and the other 2 were 8x8s. Funnily enough, the dirty pours turned out a lot more better than some of the acrylic pours I actually did, which is absolutely fine because I still got something out of it. But in terms of dirty pours, these 2 were leftover paints from about a day's worth of putting in a pot. I honestly added only a little bit of white just to make up the amount of paint within the pot, and to be honest the white just disintegrated into nothing. This one was actually the pure white one, and as you can see it just turned into like a cell-like situation. It's still very, very beautiful, as is so is this one. It's very, very unique. These are both definitely unique in terms of composition. Pigment again is really, really good. There is some really nice textures. Had a little bit of craving down here, I think you can see it, but again not at all an issue. There was quite a lot of runner for this one. I think I actually got the mixture for this one bang on because it's actually pretty well textured. The colours and pigments are still here, all the sides are basically covered, and yeah, it looks pretty cool. This is the other one day one. Pigment has slightly differed around these edges, but again that's nothing compared to what I have seen before. Still pretty cool. Last but not least of the dirty pours is this one. This is actually the 1 to 2 week old dirty pour in a pot. So I pretty much put any leftover paints from like these 2, a couple other acrylic pours, put it into a pot, left it for about 2 weeks, and then I added some white acrylic paint into the mixture. I did have to use a different PVA glue because I didn't have any WHsmiths PVA glue left, but again like I said it never really turned up on the canvas. This turned very weird because the whole canvas was covered and then it just started leaking off the sides, so I didn't know if it was like creating cells and then just decided to leak off, or it just wasn't working because it started to go a bit funky and weird. So I'm just going to leave that down to the fact you can't really do a dirty pour after 2 weeks using this PVA glue. But again, it still turned out quite funky and interesting. So that is the 3 dirty pours I did with that PVA glue. Last but not least is the much bigger, so I can't actually hold this upright, but this is basically the very big and loud acrylic pour that I did on, I think this is 69 by 42 centimeters roughly. And as you can see, once it dried it started to crack and go a bit weird. The texture is really nice, but in terms of drying it just didn't work out as well as I originally thought. It did look pretty cool, but then again in the end the pigments kind of dulled down quite a lot, and then as you can see it cracked and went a bit weird. Some of the colours did work with this amount of paint on this board, but I have done another pour on the back of this and it has not cracked at all. So I don't know what happened. Maybe it's just this, or maybe I didn't get the ratio right, but as you can see it's not as successful as I would have thought. So within larger canvases or large boards I would definitely stick to the smaller boards for using this PVA glue. Obviously this is the only one I did, but again that's just my general opinion. So guys, to conclude this conclusion about the WHsmith PVA glue as a pouring medium, I do really like it. I really think it was one of the better PVA glues I've ever tried. This does work on smaller canvases. I think when you get up to the 12 by 15 canvases it can be a bit iffy, but again, I've only ever had one try at that. But for the price of £3.99 for 500ml is pretty good, and a good starting point trying to get you into this kind of world of acrylic pouring. At the end, I really think the best ratio for it was about 50% acrylic paint, and that's specific to the Crawford Black acrylic paint, with 30% PVA glue, with 20% water. With the black and the white, there is a bit of a difference in her ratio, because the black tends to eat up the water quite a lot. So obviously I would put in a bit more water for the black, whereas the white absorbs it really well. That's just something I observed whilst doing all these acrylic paintings. But thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you found this useful. Let me know if you are going out to go try the PVA glue. Comment down below what you thought, whether or not you like this video or not. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye guys!